long time I've been wondering what Saddahaq is. And it's good to come here face to face with what and who Saddahaq is. But I want to go back and start this whole thing with the first time I heard this term. It was 2006 in Dungarpur district. We were doing a big mass social audit, and there were about 1,000 people from different parts of the country there. And one of the delegations that had come was a delegation of women from Punjab, from the National Federation of Indian Women. And in that delegation was a 74-year-old woman. Now, in that social audit exercise, the whole idea was to go walking from village to village, from worksite to worksite, from home to home, all 1,000 people right across the district to make sure that NREGA would reach every home. So in the middle of that summer, we asked that woman, her name was Kripal Kaur, she's passed away now. We said, you know, you've come to Dungarpur, you have to walk, it's so hot, it's so difficult. And you have come, there were other younger people, do you think you'll be able to manage? And she says, of course I'll manage. And it was a very, very difficult Padyatra on which people went. But she did manage. And then she came back, and when we were doing our whole experience sharing, we asked her also to speak because she was one of the oldest people who had gone around walking and completed her whole several days, several kilometers, eating anywhere, going to the toilet anywhere, sleeping anywhere. And she got up and said, मैं तो पूरी जगह घूमी और मुझे कहने के लिए एक ही चीज़ है जो हम पंजाबी में कहते हैं, साडा हक इत्थे रख. So, Saddahaq Change is why I've come here. I've come here because basically I don't have that much time, you don't have that much time. And you'll excuse me because I don't think I can go into many, many things that I would love to go into in great depth, including many of the things that JP talked about, many which I don't agree with. Some I do agree with, but many I don't agree with. But I don't, that's a debate that we must continue at different levels. But I've come here to tell a story, not my own, but of some others who I've worked with for the last 30 odd years. And what they have to say, how they've had to say it, I don't have the time to tell a 30-year story in 30 minutes. So I'm going to do it how they do it best. I use this in many places, and the reason why I think it works is that poor people firstly have immense common sense. Actually, frankly, one reason I don't agree with compulsory voting is if I think that people, I don't necessarily think your class and my class coming to vote will lead to a better country. I think all of you who have come here and made an effort to come do so because you have something in mind. You have an interest. Making someone compulsorily come here and sit here and listen to me or listen to anyone else is not going to lead to anything better. It has to come from some interest that drives us in a better country. And that's why more poor people vote, because they have an interest. That's why the poor have not only protected, they have framed our democracy. And that's why we owe to the poor of this country anything that we have. Every single major struggle in this country is actually backed and run by the poor, by large numbers of the poor. So, yeah, some of these are read because there are millions who think like you. They not only think, they act. What is missing, actually I would put engage on top, because those who read need to engage, they need to act. And I'm going to talk about in these 30 odd minutes or 25 minutes, some of these things where they've acted. The story of the right to information is not a story of padhe likhe log in India. It is not a story of those of us who know how to read documents, understand documents. Right to information, everyone, when it started in our area, everyone said, you've gone mad. You're not talking about roti, kapda, makan, land, minimum wages, which we were talking about. What does this mean to the poor? But actually, it was not people like Aruna Roy or me who were who framed these particular questions. It was ordinary people. It was a person called Mohanji. It was a person called Chunibai. It was a person called Bhavar, Sushila, who said first while fighting for minimum wages, sitting on one dharna and andolan after the other, that when they asked for their wages, for work that they had done, they were told, you can't get these wages. So they said, why? They said, you don't work, the poor don't work. Even today, everyone thinks that the poor do no work. God knows who built the buildings. God knows who built the roads. God knows who feeds us our food. And God knows who works and who doesn't. So they said, when they were told that you don't work, they said, we worked for 8 hours a day, we worked in the sun, we worked, where have we not worked? So the answer came, that's in the records. So they said, show us those records. So the answer was, no, these are secret documents. You can't see those records. So out of that, the first real demand came where they said, until we get these records, we will always be liars. And those people who are the real liars, who are the real thieves, will always be considered the saukars. So when those records came out, first informally and illegally, from friends who gave it to us at night, copy it down, from someone else who gave us a copy to showed it to us, from illegal and informal means. And when we started reading it out in public hearings, it turned out that on a work site there were 40 people, and in the muster rolls there were 400. And who were the other 360? Dead people, people who didn't exist in the village. When we started reading them out, people laughed and cried at the same time. They laughed because it was so ridiculous. There were cats and dogs' names on the muster rolls. And they cried because they were not getting their wages because of those people. Those muster rolls where people had not worked at all were being paid full wages. And those sites where people were working were being paid half the wage because they were told you haven't worked. So when those documents came out, the truth came out. And as they said, it separated the thieves from the real people. So those lessons, how did they come? I'm going to speak in a series of slogans very quickly so that we can have some time for questions and answers. The first slogan, when we first started talking to people, people used to say, this is government money. When we talked either of corruption or we talked of the lack of wages, they said, it's government money, let it go, let it burn. But when they realized they were not getting their wage, they understood it's my money. Because I've worked for it and I'm not getting it. I'm not getting my due. And they realized then it's all our money. So it became mera paisa and then it became hamara paisa. And out of that came the very first slogan of the Right to Information movement in India, which is hamara paisa, hamara hisab. So I'm going to ask you to also say that slogan with me because it defines democracy in many ways in 4 words. I can give you a lecture for half an hour or half a day, and on Right to Information I can spend 3 days, but the poor will speak in 4 words. And they will speak in a way that if you cannot understand those 4 words, you cannot understand. It's simple, it's straightforward, it defines our democracy. So I'll ask you to say it with me. Hamara paisa, hamara hisab. So hamara paisa. Okay, now I can definitely tell that this is a middle class audience because the middle class is scared to say slogans. The middle class is scared someone will see. The middle class is scared to go on the streets. The middle class is scared to do anything except sit on its computer and do something there. So let's see it a little bit more. Even if you're an engaged middle class, let's see you with a little more gumption and put your hands up. And if you believe in that, if you think this is not the right thing to say, don't say it. But if you think it's the right thing, say it properly, say it loudly, say it with some enthusiasm, and say it with some gusto. So with your hands up. Hamara paisa. Okay. That's the way, and I can now begin to say that you're beginning to engage. So this another very powerful slogan that came out at that time, which a very important journalist, and these connections that you're all making through these kinds of platforms are very important. In the first dharna that took place, a 40-day dharna in 1996 in a town called Byawar, some very eminent senior journalists came. Nikhil Chakravarti, Kuldeep Nayyar, Ajit Bhattacharya, Prabhash Joshi. 3 out of those 4 people have died. But they came to Byawar, they stayed with us the whole day, they listened to things that were going on, and they were the ones who told us, you know, don't give up on this struggle. They said it's a very important struggle. Just because you're 300-400 people here, don't think it's a small one. It's a struggle that is important to the future of this country. Nikhil Chakravarti wrote a little note saying, you may not get it in your lifetime, but don't give up this right to information battle. Prabhash Joshi said, I've come here to pay respect to all of you, meaning the people who were there, who were called the Ghagra Paltan because they were all women who had not been to school, wearing ghagras, Rajasthani lehengas and ghagras. So people said, ये घाघरा पलटन क्या करेगी और इसका क्या लेना देना है सूचना के अधिकार से? So Prabhash Joshi said, I want to tell all of you, including the Ghaghra Paltan, that we as journalists owe you. For our bread and butter, we need the right to information. You're the ones fighting for it for the rest of the country, and you're fighting for it for all citizens. So at that time, another slogan that came up, which redefined right to information across the world, the discourse across the world, was Hum janenge, hum jiyenge. The right to know, the right to live. Because if we do not know, where will we get our rations from? If we do not know what's in the muster rolls, how will we get our wages? If we do not know, how will we get our medicines in the PHC? If we do not know how many teachers there are in that school, how can we ever enforce our accountability in that education system? So the right to know, if we do not know, how will we prevent that displacement that is taking place for God knows what reason, at what cost, and at cost to whom and at profit to whom? So at every possible stage, we need to know. So the other slogan, which again was so strong and so powerful, Hum janenge, hum jiyenge. Again, forwards. Again, nowhere in the world, right to information had always been described as a freedom of information issue, as a freedom of expression issue, not as a life and livelihood issue, not as a survival issue. So it was again a very powerful redefinition which has now spread all across the world. But the Hamara Paisa, Hamara Hisab continued in more ways for a stronger democratic understanding. It moved towards ये पैसे हमारे आपके नहीं किसी के बाप के. Because it wasn't just a question of accounts and accountability, it was a question of accountability. Who the hell has ownership over that money? Whose money is it? And how is it to be spent? So let's see if you've now progressed in the sloganeering school. ये पैसे हमारे आपके, पैसे हमारे आपके, पैसे हमारे आपके, हमारा पैसा, हमारा पैसा. Okay. So, but they didn't just leave it at पैसा. ये पंचायत हमारे आपकी नहीं किसी के बाप की. क्योंकि पंचायत किसकी है? सरपंच की है क्या? वार्ड मेंबर की है क्या? पंचायत हमारे और आपकी है और किसी के बाप की नहीं है. तो ये पंचायत हमारे आपकी, ये संसद हमारे आपकी, क्या एमपी साहब की है? एमपी साहब की तो नहीं है. तो लोकसभा एजाज, राज्यसभा एजाज, पंचायत एजाज, ये सरकार हमारे आपकी किसकी है? बीजेपी की है? मोदी की है? मैं तो नहीं मानता हूं भाई, कभी नहीं मानूंगा. तो ना मोदी की है, ना बीजेपी की है, ना कांग्रेस की है, ना तेलुगु देशम की है. सरकार हमारे और आपकी है. And that sense of ownership and that sense of participation is what we need to go and take us forward. And therefore, ये देश हमारे आपका है कि नहीं है? तो ये देश हमारे आपका, ये देश हमारे आपका. So that in a whole summary, was the right to information movement's trajectory. Now I want to talk about very quickly 2 or 3 campaigns. One is a campaign currently on the right to information. So the right to information was an issue in the wilderness for a long time. It is not, these days we all want that we raise an issue and it's something will get sorted out there and then. It took 10 years before we had, from 1996, which was by then the right to information had become a movement in our area. But before we got a national law, it took 10 years. 10 years, people had said it will take a lifetime. After the law was passed, to my mind, the law has led to a much bigger movement. Today, whether you go to schools or colleges or go anyone else, every person who uses the right to information is actually someone contributing to that movement. Every person who pursues that application is contributing to the movement. Today, it is estimated there are about 8 million RTI users every year in this country. It's an incredible amount. So there is no neta in the right to information movement. There are 8 million netas at least. And even those who have not used it yet, they are also there along with them. If there's one person in a family, that whole family is involved. If there's one person in a group, the whole group is involved. The whole group is not filing RTIs, but it's involved with what's happening with that RTI. So we need to take that whole process forward. We don't need 8 million. Actually, we need this process to go forward so that everyone everywhere starts making sure that India's democracy becomes transparent and accountable. So we started a campaign in NCPRI this year called Use RTI to Save RTI. Why Save RTI? Because RTI बिचारा जब से पास हुआ, तब से उसके ऊपर there is every attempt made not to strengthen it, but to weaken it. So it is one law that people have defended. It is one law that has been defended by the citizens of this country. So just now, there is, I don't know how many of you know, there has been no Chief Information Commissioner in India since June. Ridiculous situation. Okay, one government had complete paralysis. The other government? It's a government that acts, it's a government that acts immediately. It's maximum government, but no commissioner. So this maximum government also has not set up anything to take this whole thing forward. So we started off by former Chief Information Commissioners putting RTI applications saying that let us know why you have not yet appointed a Chief Information Commissioner. Shailesh Gandhi put in one, Wajad Habibullah put in one, and we had prominent figures. But then we ourselves thought that we need to democratize this process. We don't need just prominent figures. We don't need netas. We don't need big shots. We need ordinary people and citizens. So now we've changed that slogan a little bit into use RTI to open India's democracy. And we want all of you, if there's any value to my coming here, we want each one of you to file one RTI. We want you to let us know. You can even let Saddahaq know, because there's one platform, I believe, which does all these engagement kinds of things. And we'll keep track of that. You file an application, within how many days should you get an answer? 30 days, okay. This is like a good class, because actually people know the RTI all over the country. They know comma and full stop of the RTI. That's a great part about it. So we'll keep track of those 30 days. Does an answer come? Each one should do it in their own area. Transparency and accountability in what interests you, in education, in health, in roads, in scholarships, in policy, in industrial policy, in agricultural policy, in seeds, in fertilizers, wherever there are a million topics. If there are 1.25 crore people, there are 1.25 crore questions at least in this country, different questions. And each one of those answers will help us have a better India. So how many of you I'd like to know, in the middle even now, are willing to file one question and connect with us in this and be a part of this? And don't raise your hands if you're not going to. So, okay. I will rely on Saddahaq to follow up on this. Don't let anyone out of the gate until you get their commitment on this. And you write to us with your own question, either your subject or your question, and we promise that in 2-3 days we'll get back to you with how best to frame the question in case you want our help. And if not, you just file it and send us a copy of that, so that we can gradually keep track. And over a period of a year or year and a half, in many, many spheres, in security, in defense, in all kinds of spheres, we can open up India's democracy and make it more transparent. But transparent, so that's one campaign. A second campaign that I'd like you all to join us on is a campaign, actually, the whole Lokpal debate was a debate for accountability. Lokpal also has not been appointed. That also needs to be done. Whistleblower protection law, 40 people, more than 40 people have been killed. That law was passed, the rules are not there. So if we think this is not things that cost money, this is surely not dole or khairat, which I keep getting accused of propelling, because when you talk of the poor, suddenly it's all dole. Don't give dole, but what is the dole in a whistleblower protection rules? What is the dole in a Lokpal? What is the dole in having a chief information commissioner except his own salary if he's not going to do anything? So these, what we want, apart from all this, which we should push for and which is an agenda, again, I would request all of you to take up, is to have a grievance redress law. And again, I'm going to take you through, like slogans, the wisdom of the people. When we were saying, and you all, many of you may know, we had differences on the whole Lokpal structure with the India Against Corruption. And the reason for that difference was because, like the RTI is a bottom-up, empowering people and disempowering those concentrations of power, making that office an official and public representative more accountable, reducing their power, increasing the citizens' power. We wanted an accountability mechanism that would do the same. We did not want an all-powerful Lokpal Lokpal agency, police agency, that would sort out corruption for us. We wanted us to be a part of it. So how could that be done? And we didn't have proper answers. But a group of Dalit youth in Bhilwara district in April 2011 came to us and said, we want you to come for Ambedkar Jayanti. We knew those youth were fantastic youth because they had been fighting Dalit atrocities in their area and facing great problems. And there were some school going and some college kids. We said, yes, we'll come, but you are the ones who know in accountability laws what big problems take place in accountability systems. And you're unable to enforce accountability of the SCST Atrocities Act, of all the discrimination provisions, of untouchability, which continues in our country in such vast numbers and vast areas. So they said, we don't know, but then they said, okay, on Ambedkar Jayanti, we'll tell you. And they told us the following 5 things. If you have a paper and pen, write them down. But to which we've added a 6th. They said, सबसे पहले कि यदि हमें, I'm going to say it in Hindi, and then I'll say briefly in English. सबसे पहले, everyone here will understand Hindi basically, but सबसे पहले तो हमें जानकारी होनी चाहिए. जानकारी नहीं हो, and that wasn't सूचना, जानकारी, knowledge. If we do not know, how will we ever ask for any form of accountability? So we should have full information, knowledge. दूसरा उन्होंने कहा कि जानकारी भी हो, तब भी इस देश में कहीं सुनवाई नहीं होती. There is no place where you can be heard. Heard means not just that someone hears you, you get acknowledged that yes, you were heard. You get an acknowledgement receipt. You have it on your person that you have been heard. तो वो सुनवाई नहीं होती. सुनवाई भी हो जाती है तो कार्रवाई नहीं होती. कार्रवाई की कोई गारंटी नहीं. मतलब महीने में करे तो करे, बाबूजी चाहे तो 6 महीने में करे, और बाबूजी नहीं चाहे तो कभी नहीं करे. There is no guarantee of time-bound action. तो हमें कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए within a time frame. If yes, by when, and if not, why not? तो कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए. नंबर 4, कार्रवाई भी होती है तो वो सारे सरकारी लोग कोई दूर कमरे में बैठ के खुद आपस में बैठ के बात करके आके कहते हैं कि नहीं कोई अट्रॉसिटी नहीं हुआ. अरे मेरी पिटाई हुई, मेरा कान काट दिया किसी ने, मुझे घोड़े से उतारा और गधे पर बिठाया, और आप कह रहे हो कोई अट्रॉसिटी नहीं हुई आपस में बात करके, तो मेरी भागीदारी होनी चाहिए. It must be with the participation of the person concerned. चौथा उन्होंने कहा कि सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत है इस देश में कि कंप्लेनेंट जो कंप्लेंट फाइल करता है सबसे पहले उसकी पिटाई होती है. तो मेरी सुरक्षा होनी चाहिए. आई मस्ट गेट प्रोटेक्शन. सो जानकारी, सुनवाई, कार्रवाई, भागीदारी, सुरक्षा, information and knowledge, a hearing, time-bound action, participation, and protection. These 5 elements should go into a law. Very powerful ideas. After that, it's some idiotic lawyer who sits and does the writing. The ideas come from people. The right to information laws, ideas came from people. From ordinary people, from people like those Bhilwara kids. And I think those Bhilwara principles should one day be a part of textbooks across the world when grievance redress laws and accountability laws are talked about and their theoretical framework is talked about, which is why I spend time talking about it. Because actually we must acknowledge once again that people who are really doing things are these ordinary people struggling all over. Struggling day after day, month after month, year after year, struggling. Those who won the right to information battle amongst us, I know people who had spent 40 days on dharna, 56 days on dharna, people whose घर में चूल्हा नहीं चलता जब तक वो नहीं कमाते, and yet they were willing to give time. I do not know of middle class people who would give 40 days time. Do we know it? So let's think about it honestly. And they did not have questions. And when we won, and when that law finally came, it's not like they went home saying, okay, now I'll get a job and I'll be okay. It's their same lives. But they had changed something for the country. They had changed something for a battle for dignity. They had changed something where they knew they were fighting not just for themselves, but for everyone else and for a better society. So we need to give time for that. We need to give... So second thing that I'd just like to, and I'll end with this, so that there can be a little bit of discussion. So there's a sixth one that we've added to that, which thank you, which is our whole experience from public hearings, that there should be a collective platform where redress takes place. Because a hearing by a senior officer in his room is an unequal relationship. I cannot confront that person. I cannot even begin to talk to them. But you put 20 senior officers here and 200 of the rest of us there. उठ के कभी झूठ नहीं बोलेंगे. The executive engineer of Bijli will say, your bill is correct, झूठ बोल रहे हो. One poor tribal comes with a 30,000 rupee bill. He says, first pay it, then I'll talk to you. He says, but I have one light bulb. He says, झूठ बोल रहे हो. कैसे बोल रहे हो कि एक लट्टू है? पहले पैसा दो, फिर देखेंगे. And when 30 people come and tell that executive engineer, no one came to read our bills, wherever our bills come from, he says, माफी, गलती हो गई. आ जाएंगे, कल आ जाएंगे. Because he knows he cannot tell lies in front of those 30. And those other 170 who are there also say, okay, we must keep it in mind that this can happen. And one starts supporting and helping the other for a far better accountability. So the dynamic of a collective platform, that is the sixth thing that we've tried to introduce. We've tried to put all these into the grievance redress bill, which unfortunately was not passed by Parliament, which we thought fortunately we had managed to get commitments from every single party of every single big political party leader. And Mr. Arun Jaitley, who used to meet us every third day because we were fighting with the government and saying things, and who promised and made a statement in Parliament, since then has given us no appointment. And the BJP that said, हमें तो आने दो, अभी पास कर लेंगे, हम भी पास कर लेंगे, लेकिन ये नहीं पास कर पाए तो हम आते ही पास करेंगे. तो आते ही पास करना तो दूर, वो तो भूल गए. So unless you and I and all of us remind them, unless we shake them up, unless we catch them and say that where are your commitments, existing commitments, not new things, they will continue to get away with this, and it is certainly not acceptable at all. And the grievance redress law is RTI Part 2. Can any one of you tell me Those who are sitting here, do any of you have a grievance? Government, those who have, just put up their hands. You don't have any grievance. You have no complaint, no grievance. Think. You don't have? You have. So put up your hand. Don't be shy. They don't know. Maybe. But okay, again, if I were to ask the poor, they would put up both hands because they have more. They don't have more hands than that, but they have multiple grievances, and actually you and I do too. The park in front of our house, our road, the gas connection, the telephone connection, the bijli connection, the school, the college, the whatever, our city and how it runs, our legislator and how he runs or she runs. So the grievance redress law is something that concerns all of us. Even if we don't file an RTI application, we will one day file a grievance redress application if we get this law passed and if we make it work the way we made RTI work. RTI doesn't work perfectly, but still it is about the only way you can get some answer from many government offices. You may not get the full answer, you may not get the right answer, but you can pursue it. And believe me, if we are frustrated with RTI, there is no government office where RTI aate hi, RTI aa gaya. Matlab the whole office suddenly looks at the whole thing and they hold their head, sir dard ho gaya, kaise iska jawab dein. And no government officer in the country does not think RTI when they take a pen in their hand and put that pen to paper. It has had that kind of impact. Grievance redress law has similar potential. It matters to all of us. So we need to, that's why I want to make an appeal to all of you to join that. The last appeal I want to make is that there is currently a mobilization on the 2nd of December. All these laws, the Employment Guarantee Act, I haven't had time to talk about all these others. I don't just belong to the Transparency and Accountability movement. I belong first to a movement for a more equal and a more just India. An India in which my own motivation of doing the work I do is because I think poverty is a terrible crime. So that's what drives me to do what I do. That's what's got all of us into these issues. That is what has brought these things forward. And therefore, the battle for the Employment Guarantee Act was also similarly, I'll say one slogan, two slogans of the Employment Guarantee Act because I think they're important again. हर हाथ को काम मिले, काम का पूरा दाम मिले. Again, everyone sitting here, anyone who doesn't agree with that, or anyone who doesn't have the same slogan in their mind, everyone here wants work, and everyone wants a just reward for that work. But the other slogan was, when the Trishul Diksha was taking place all over Rajasthan, and when these flames of communalism was being spread, then the people took the slogan out saying, Trishul nahi, talwar nahi, har haath ko kaam chahiye. What we want in our country is not these other kinds of battles. What we want is basic work. And what we want is basic development. And what is that development? Development is not stealing someone else's land and making your profits. Development is not the growth rate that you've talked about without talking about where that money will go. Development is not if we do not talk about every single citizen in this country and looking out on all sides of us, especially for those who have less than us. So we gave ourselves a constitution. Actually, I would have liked to have just made a plea for the constitution. Unfortunately, we've completely forgotten it. And there are too many articles within that constitution for me to read out today. So I've had to talk about the slogans that people make. But I think that if we look at the directive principles of state policy, it talks about guaranteed employment, trying to get there. It talks about education. It talks about health. It talks about making sure we don't have child labor. It talks about making sure that we do not have unequal treatment for men and women. It talks about all these things. It does not have the word growth there at all. But yet today, the only thing we are talking about is growth and growth rates. So there is a campaign now of many laws that we managed to win which are now under attack. The NREG is under attack. I don't have time. I know it's a controversial law. I'm happy to talk about it. But we know that it has made a huge difference in huge numbers of people's lives. It's an imperfect law. It's imperfect implementation. But it is something that has made a huge difference. The right to food, we are willing to let food grains rot in our godowns, but we don't want to distribute it. We say that we don't want to give a dole to people, but children who are hungry, we are not willing to give them food. We call that a dole. How will they study if they don't have food in their stomachs? We say that we want to give health, but where will the health come for people if we don't make sure that they have jobs, and jobs not in numbers where they can wait for us to, for our industry to come and everything else to come, but enough at least to be able to have some bargaining power and be able to fight for a dignified life. So all these laws are under attack. So there is a campaign on the 2nd of December. Several thousand people are coming together in Delhi. Even if all of you individually, one of you, two of you, some of you individually can come, it's great. But if from your organizations and networks people can come, it's great. At least once a year we want to get together. And what we are saying in that campaign is, Ab ki baar hamara adhikar. So in that there is a website also which we'll distribute, which is there. Please go on to that, log on to that. Please become a part of this campaign. And I don't have time to go into more details, but it is a broad rainbow coalition of all those who are fighting for things that are not going to hurt anyone else, but are just going to give a basic level of life and dignity in this country. And life and dignity, some in economic terms, but some also in social terms. Some people may be economically okay, but if we still treat them not as human beings, either because of their gender or because of their caste, or because of their region, or because of their language, it is also completely unacceptable. So that's the basis of this Rainbow Coalition for fighting for justice and equality and saying that those of us who are coming together, Ab ki baar hamara adhikar. So now I want to end with two slogans, this bit. One is, Saddahaq, Saddahaq. दिखा के Saddahaq, Saddahaq, Saddahaq. So एत्तेरक और अब की बार हमारा, अब की बार, अब की बार, अब की बार. There may not be time.